Good night, everyone, and welcome to Insight. Tonight, we bring you an exclusive report featuring Prime Minister Peter O'Neill. Throughout this report, we cover current issues, including the recent government reshuffling, the provocative 3 billion Kina UBS loan for oil search shares, and later PNG power issues and the ICAC legislation. But first, Mr. O'Neill discusses PNG and Australian relations with the recent visit by his regional counterpart, Prime Minister of Australia, Tony Abbott.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Now with the Australian relations. This is the first trip for Prime Minister Tony Abbott as Australian Prime Minister to Papua New Guinea. How would you describe our relationship with Australia? I mean, what is the difference from the past under your current term as Prime Minister?
I think that this trip by the Prime Minister of Australia to Papua New Guinea is one that is further strengthening our relationship between, a bilateral relationship between our two countries. It has been strong, but it is stronger now because we are engaging more. We are talking more about realignment of our the development assistance program that the Australian government gives to Papua New Guinea, our trade and investment between the two countries, and of course the people-to-people relationship between the two countries. We have now seen increased number of ministerial engagements, increased number of government official engagements. So this trip further enhances that, and we think that in the long run Papua New Guinea will benefit greatly from this. It opens up many opportunities for our citizens, especially our business community, our students and our families who are engaging with the Australian community more and more often. Prime Minister Abbott, in his early, well within his 6 months of the Prime Ministership, he has seen the significant importance of Papua New Guinea within their own relationship with Australia. So in making this trip early to Papua New Guinea, he's spending 4 days here, which is quite good for our country, and it is the significance that he places to our relationship.
Prime Minister, thank you. You said it is strong, but why is Australia reducing aid? And in particular, I mean the Borneo contract, when Australia retracted funding. Why do you believe they're questioning our government's integrity and the way our tender processes are being executed?
I think there is some misunderstanding about the funding arrangements of this particular contract that you are mentioning. This is a Papua New Guinea funded contract, and Papua New Guinea is going out to tender, and through their own processing have been able to come up with a local contractor. What has happened before was Australian government funded this program, that is the distribution of medical kits throughout all our health centers and hospitals throughout the country. So I think that we have gone through our process and we have complied with it. There are some issues about international standards, but the supplier of those medicines to this company, who is going to distribute it for us, complies with international ISO standards. So all in all, I think there's a lot of misinformation that is going on. In terms of the Australian assistance program for Papua New Guinea, there is no reduction. In fact, Australian government has reduced all the other countries except Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea's overall assistance program remains the same, and it is likely to increase because of the extra assistance they give for the asylum center and the Engau hospital and the road construction between Ramu and Medan, and of course the university funding that has been there, and the courthouse that we are rebuilding in Waigani. So in fact it is increased by close to another billion or so kina that is going for these projects that we are embarking on in the country. So I think there's a misinformation that has been circulating. Of course, on the procurement process and the tendering process, we are now going to Parliament in May to strengthen the tendering process, because a lot of members of the tenders board are public servants and they are ex officio members on the board. So what we are trying to do is replace them with private sector people who have got good standing and good business experience, so they can bring in best management practices and better governance into the tendering process. So I think all in all, after the May session of Parliament, we will have new boards on the membership of the tenders board, and you can see some remarkable improvements in the way we do public tendering process in the country.
Thank you, Prime Minister. You mentioned the asylum processing. In a statement you made yesterday, you say the asylum seekers will be dealt with quickly within the next few weeks and months. Are there any updates on the settlement agreement, and where will these asylum seekers be settled?
The settlement agreement has got a long way to go. We have to go to Parliament to set up the laws that will govern the resettlement program. Papua New Guinea is a signatory to the United Nations Refugee Convention. We are obligated to look after the refugees. So those who have been deemed to be genuine refugees, we will do all we can to make sure that they are resettled properly in our country and many other parts of the Pacific. But many of the refugees now we have in Manus, we are already starting to work to see whether they are genuine refugees or not. Many of them are economic migrants. So what will happen is most of the economic migrants will be sent back to their country of origin. So you will see that the numbers that we are talking about are very insignificant, but the processing already started. Our own government officials at immigration are already processing these interviews, and we will start returning many of them back to their country of origin over the next few weeks and months.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Now, the visa processing. Mr. Abbott said yesterday Australia is working towards better processes. Do you believe that there will be positive changes for Papua New Guinea on visa arrival in Australia?
I think as many of our Papua New Guineans are now traveling to Australia for education, tourism, holidays, business, family connections, we have made an approach to the Australian government. They need to be a bit more flexible on the visa arrangement that they have with us. As we have announced recently, all Australians coming to the country, we are giving them the same treatment they give us. That means that they have to have visa before they arrive in Papua New Guinea. Similarly, we have to have visa before we enter Australia. So we are encouraging the Australian government to be a bit more flexible, and that we have similar arrangements they have with New Zealand. Now, New Zealand and Australia have got the same computer system. So the Australian government is now committed to improving that computer system in PNG so that it can talk to the Australian immigration system. And as a result of that, we will have an easier access to Australia. So we are making some good, steady progress. We have to get the two systems to be compatible so that they can monitor the people who are traveling in and out of the countries between the two countries.
Do you see a timeline for this computer database system to be created?
We're trying to do it as quickly as possible. For me, I think the sooner we start, the better. As many of you know, that the Australian Ministers for Foreign Affairs and Immigration and our Minister will be meeting on a monthly basis. So one of the agendas on that monthly meetings is the visa arrangements. So they will keep us informed on the progress of the implementation of this upgrading of the computer system so that they can migrate the information between the two countries. So I think good progress has been made because of our consistent message that we are giving to the Australians, that we are going out of our way to look after you on your issues about refugees and everything else. You have to also look after our people's desires, our people's wish, and that is that make it easier for the visa processing to take place.
Thank you, Prime Minister.
Coming up next, the recent government reshuffling and the question of political instability. Prime Minister's response to ex-Treasurer Don Pollioe. Coalition reshuffling within the government has seen the loss of two ministers with their portfolios, ex-Treasurer Don Pollioe and ex-Minister for Petroleum and Energy William Duma. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill is asked to clarify whether this will bring political instability. He also responds to a statement publicized by the ex-Treasurer Don Pollioe regarding the UBS loan.
PM, there have been rather momentous changes in the political front, with the recent sackings of Minister Pollioe and Minister Duma, who are both respective leaders in their political parties for this coalition government. Are you confident this is not a start of a new political instability for Papua New Guinea?
I think it is going to create more stability rather than instability, because these decisions are not easy decisions. As you say, they are leaders of their own parties, and when I made those decisions to to replace them and decommission them from their respective ministries. I did it after consultation with many other leaders. This is not a decision that I took lightly. I had to take it for the best interest of the government and the best interest of the country. Now, I know that people have stated that this will create instability, but what you can see is that a number of members of those two parties continue to remain in government. So their parties have got ministries in government and remain in government. So replacing one minister or one leader is not an issue that is going to create instability for everybody. Now, these leaders have been around in politics for a long time. They understand it. But I have to have a government that is working as a team. We can't have government where ministers go around doing their own thing. And as a result, decisions are not being implemented. Government has got to have a structure, has got to work as a team so that we deliver the programs and the policies that we are putting it out to the nation. If we do not, ministers will do their own thing and there will be a total disarray in the way government manages the affairs of the country. So I have to make that decision, and it's a tough decision, but it is a decision for the best interest of the country, that solidarity of cabinet, solidarity of ministers, solidarity of government must be maintained at all times. Now, Papua New Guinea has got to realize this. In 2012 elections, the people gave our party, PNC, the mandate to lead the government. Whether some people like it or not, that is the wish of the majority of our people in this country. Now, we will continue to have political differences. We will continue to have people who will directly oppose our way of doing and leading the country. But I think that the policies that we have so far put to the nation and we are starting to implement, there are a lot of changes taking place in the country. There's a lot of hope for the country. And I think we are on the right path, and we have to maintain that path. We have to maintain that programs that we are doing. I can only be judged by our people in 2017, whether I have done the right thing or not. If I have done the wrong thing and if I have led the country wrong, then people do not have to vote for me. But I think people will judge me fairly for the work that we are doing, and we are just beginning. We can't fix many of the problems that we have had in 1 year, 2 years. It has to be done for 3 or 4 years, and by the time the 5th year comes for the elections, people can judge us accordingly.
The aftermath of the sacking of Minister Poilier, he has stated publicly he refused to sign the 3 billion Kina loan because it was against current PNG laws, if I may quote them. Constitution Section 209, breached. No prior parliamentary approval was obtained before signing of the loan agreement on behalf of the state for such bridging and collar loans. Fiscal Responsibility Act breached. Loan would exceed 35% debt gross domestic product ratio with an extra 3 billion Kina debt to add to the current 2.3 billion Kina deficit, pushing over 60% debt GDP ratio this fiscal year. IPBC Act breached. If the borrowing is by the National Petroleum PNG Limited, there is prohibition against granting of securities and over assets of the General Business Trust, and the revenue of the company is a property of GBT and such cannot be offered as security for loans. The last, Organic Law of Sovereign Wealth Fund breached. Proceeds from the LNG will be diverted directly to UBS in servicing the loan. The revenues were intended for PNG, benefit through the budgetary process. Minister Poilier said this would greatly increase PNG's debt burden. What is your response to this? Have the laws been breached?
I know that the issues about Section 209, so let me address each and every one of them. Now, when we got this loan, before I address the laws, let me address the background under which this loan and these arrangements took place. When the LNG project was started, we, Papua New Guinea, had no money in the last government. So we went to the Arabs and we borrowed 1.6 billion Australian dollars to fund our 19.45% interest in the LNG. Now, what has happened since is that we had to mortgage Oilset shares to borrow that money. On top of the Oilset shares, we had to mortgage everything else, Air Niugini, PNG Power, PNG Ports, Telecom. The assets of the General Business Trust was mortgaged, offered as security so that we can borrow this money. Now on March 6, 2014, under the arrangement, PNG government was required to make an offer to repay that loan, repay the Arabs so that they will release all these things. When we went out and we organized the loan, and we did it by a competitive bidding process, and that bidding process was managed by the central bank. Now, unlike many other loans before, the government officials took control of this particular transaction. Central bank went out there and assessed all the banks, ANZ, Barclays, UBS, and all the other very, very big international firms to bid so that they can lend us the money so we can go out there and repay the Arabs so we can bring all our assets back into the country. On March 6, 2014, before that we wrote a letter. I wrote a letter to the Arab leader and telling him that, listen, Papua New Guinea government wants to buy back all their assets, including the oil shares. We owned close to 15%. Now, what has happened since is that the Arabs said, no, we want to hold on to the shares. Under the agreement, we want to hold on to the shares. So we had no way from owning close to 15% to zero, ended up owning zero of our biggest company in Papua New Guinea. Oil Search is our biggest company that has got assets that we have in this country, oil and gas assets. So just imagine what kind of confidence the rest of the world would have on Papua New Guinea. All of a sudden, we have no say whatsoever in our own company, but we allow the Arabs and we allow all the other foreigners to own our assets. So Papua New Guineans have got to be very clear that this is our assets. We have to have ownership of it. So when we try to buy back our shares, the Arabs said they cannot sell it. So we needed to somehow find a way to own some shares. So we went back to Oil Search directly, telling them that, listen, we want to own some shares in this company. You have to now issue the shares to us. So Oil Search, needing the money to buy some shares in the Gulf project, Gulf Oil and Gas project in the Gulf province, decided that they will sell us more shares so that we will buy it and then they will use that money to do their transaction. We must remember that the Arabs were going to sell us the shares back at $8.55. But we as a government negotiated a much lower amount of money, that is $8.20. And we bought it at a cheaper price and we bought 10%. So instead of paying the Arabs 1.6 billion Australian dollars, we ended up buying the shares at Oil Search for 1.2 billion Australian dollars. So our loan exposure, in fact, has been reduced from 1.6 to 1.2. So how can you increase your loan burden? Before we had 1.6, now we have 1.2, so the loan really has come down. And in fact, we have also had some savings on the purchase price. We bought it from $8.55 and we brought it down to $8.20. So all in all, I think many of the financial experts around the world think that this is a very good transaction. Papua New Guinean government has gained a lot. Now, we have not mortgaged everything like we did in the first loan. That was the problem. We mortgaged Air Niugini, PNG Power and everything. On this loan alone, we are now only using the Oil Search shares, meaning that all the other mortgages are now released. We now have no mortgage over Air Niugini, no mortgage over PNG Power, no mortgage over Telecom, no mortgage over PNG Ports. All our other assets are now free. No mortgage over the LNG shares. So in fact, we have released all those now because of this transaction. So I think the treasurer's, former treasurer's point of view is, I think, is that he is trying to justify his own inability to see through all these issues. The second issue is about the breach of the Section 209. Now, our advice that we are getting from all our legal officers in state solicitor and everything, now it is impossible that every time a government wants to go and get a loan, you have to recall Parliament. So the law allows us that we can table these reports after when at the next session of the Parliament. When a transaction has been done, it has to be tabled in Parliament. So in the May session of Parliament, I've made a public commitment that we will table this on the floor of Parliament. Now, one thing everybody has to be very clear about this is that other loans, including that Arab loan before, have never been tabled in Parliament. Over the 40 years, many of the loans that we have got from World Bank or IMF or anybody for that matter has never been tabled in Parliament. This is the first loan that will be tabled in Parliament. So in terms of accountability and following our laws, we have done the right thing. So we are comfortable, and I think that we have not breached any laws to that effect. Now, the former Treasurer talks about bridging the Fiscal Responsibility Act. That is about the limits on the debt to GDP, which is the 35% we are talking about. Now, we were still within the limit when we had 1.6 billion loan to the Arabs. Now, our loan has come down, so how can it go beyond that? Our loan has really come down from 1.6 down to 1.2. So I can't see the logic behind the argument that all of a sudden your loan exposure has gone up. All our experts, including recent analysis by the ANZ economists, have indicated to us that our limits, our loan exposure is very much limited to well below 35% of GDP. Now, one thing people have to understand very carefully is that our debt level is mainly domestic. Our exposure in foreign debt is very limited, and many of the foreign debt is now well below it is well below the interest rates that are being charged commercially around the world. So most of our debt is concessional loan, meaning that it is about 2.5%, 2% rate. Now, those are very good loans that are extended for a long period of time, so it does not put pressure on Papua New Guinea government's cash flow or foreign reserve position. So I think that our treasurer is just misinforming himself, or he is naive, that he doesn't understand the financial systems that are governing this process. The central bank that manages our economy is comfortable and approves this deal. The Department of Treasury has advised him that this deal is a good deal, so he should sign. The Attorney General's office has given a clearance through the state solicitor's office that it is in order for him to sign. So who else is advising him? He must have some other motive, and our only situation is that his motives are political, that he is trying to create instability, he is trying to go against cabinet decision. Cabinet decision is not a one-man decision. 32 of us sit in that room and we address these issues and we make a decision. So I think that his arguments are flawed. When he talks about the IPBC Act, IPBC management has been involved in this transaction. They have negotiated together with Central Bank and Department of Treasury with UBS. They have negotiated with all the other financiers, ANZ and Barclays and everybody else. They advised government that this is the best deal on the table. It is not something I went and negotiated with everybody. They went there because they are professionals. It is their job to advise government. And we are satisfied with their advice and we made a decision. So I think in 5 to 10 to 20 years' time, people will look back and say that this is one of the best deals that our country has done. We have ownership of our own assets. We are not allowing outsiders to own all of our assets. We must maximize the benefits that's coming to our country, not only through tax, but it must be through dividends, it must be through royalty, it must be through all the other special support grants that we give as a part of the resource development that we do in the country. So for us as government, we want to maximize the benefits that PNG as a country and our people take. We don't want others to come in and start developing all the resource and take everything out and take all the benefits out. We have had that experience in the past. We've had that experience in Bougainville, we've had that experience in Oktedi, we've had experience in Misima, now we've had experience in Pogra and Lir, where we have very limited shareholding. And as a result, we are not getting the maximum benefit that we truly deserve. When we argue that Papua New Guinea should benefit more, you tell me, how are we going to benefit more? We have to have ownership. We have to tax them. We have to make sure that we increase our royalties. We have to increase our development levies. And that is our responsibility as government to do that. The last argument that is saying to us is that we are now going to breach the sovereign wealth fund that we are trying to establish. Nobody is saying that the funds coming from LNG will go straight into repaying this loan. All the funds that are coming from the benefits of LNG will go straight to the sovereign wealth fund, and sovereign wealth fund will give the funds to consolidated revenue, that is through budget, and then the budget, through the normal process by Parliament, will approve all the expenditures. So I don't know where he's getting this argument that sovereign wealth fund processes are going to be undermined. This is the only government that has passed laws like ICAC, Independent Commission Against Corruption, established sovereign wealth fund, establishing all the other bills that are going to improve governance issues in the country. We are putting money to all the sectors that has been neglected in the past. So I think his arguments are merely political. I know that people have political ambitions, and there's nothing wrong with having political ambitions. But by telling lies and trying to use every little avenue to try and maximize that ambition is dangerous for the country. We must tell the truth. We must put our policies out. We must tell what is right and what is wrong. If we cannot depend on our government officials to give us the best advice, and we go against their advice, we must have a legitimate reason, not by trying to portray that they know everything about the economy. Our experts are telling us that we are on the right track. I have limited experience about the economy, and the former treasurer has got even more less experience than I do in the knowledge about the economy. So we have to be very careful that how we portray these arguments to the public, because some of our colleagues are misleading our people for their own benefit.
Can I confirm you're saying they have not been breached?
Absolutely not. We have got all the other agencies of governments, and we've got the Ombudsman Commission now investigating that deal. We are encouraging the Ombudsman Commission to investigate that. We welcome any other entity of government or agency of government wanting to have a look at it. You must realize that this is a very public transaction. When you are buying shares in a company like Oil Search, Oil Search is the 25th biggest company listed on the stock exchange in Australia. There are thousands and thousands of people all around the world who invest in that company. And their reporting structure to the stock exchange and the laws of Australia, which governs the stock exchange, is much higher than our laws that of reporting. So you can imagine if there was something wrong with the deal, the outcry and the public reflection of that through the share prices and stock holdings in Australian stock exchange will be great. And you can see the commentators of all the financial experts, even the share prices that has gone up. Papua New Guinea government has now gained because the prices have gone up. So their reflection is that they have confidence that this is a good transaction. They are very happy that government of Papua New Guinea and the people of Papua New Guinea are shareholders of the biggest company in this country. Oil Search is the biggest company, biggest taxpayer, and biggest employer of our people. So why shouldn't we not have any shares in there? Do we allow foreigners to own everything? Now, we need to get our arguments in the right perspective. Let us talk about the benefits that will come to our people as a result of this transaction.
Prime Minister, there are suggestions Minister Duma's sackings may also be related to this. Is this true?
Minister Duma was decommissioned well before the UBS loan was approved. I don't think that is true. I believe people are just trying to tie all these issues out again for political gain, and this is again an indication of people who are trying to go out there and misconstrue the truth so that it satisfies their argument and justifies their own position. Now, I don't mind arguing with people on the policy debates and arguing with people on programs that we are trying to implement, But trying to justify this with untruth statements, it is not true. And I think people have to realize that Minister Duma has been Minister for Petroleum for quite a while. It needed a change. He's been one of our longest serving ministers there. And Minister Duma is a very talented minister. And URP is still a partner in our government. We will utilize his services elsewhere in government, and we will continue to work with Minister Duma. And Minister Duma has got a lot of experience, but in terms of petroleum and energy, it needed a change. Industry also wanted a change. Stakeholders wanted a change in that ministry, and that is why the change took place.
Stay tuned. Insight asks Prime Minister to respond to reports from economic experts within the government think tank, the National Research Institute, on Oil Search shares and the financial benefits from the LNG project. Economic experts have recently commented on the UBS loan, describing it to have an adverse effect for the citizens of Papua New Guinea. Insight shares Prime Minister Peter O'Neill's reaction.
The government's think tank, the National Research Institute, say the 3 billion kina loan to buy Oil Search shares will adversely affect millions of people, and I quote, across many generations. Do you agree with this comment?
I think it's a statement coming from our academics who should be researching the facts before they come out and make public pronouncements like that. It is sad to see commentators like our academics who have no experience in the financial management area or the economy to make just general comments about the economy and about facts that they have got no experience, no expertise. And I think I question their motives, why they are making statements. They should research the facts before they come out and make these kind of statements. Now, people in the economic responsibility and portfolios and experiences, like recently the ANZ Bank economists who are based in Singapore and Hong Kong, who assess the economies around the world and especially in Pacific and Papua New Guinea. Now, they are confident that many of our transactions, especially our debt levels, are within manageable range, well below 35% of GDP. Now, you look at economies, I'll give you a good example. You look at economies like Japan. Japan's debt level is well above the GDP level, 20% above GDP. When you look at United States, almost like 110% above GDP. When you look at economies in Europe, around 150% well above GDP. When you look at China, I think it's about 60 to 70% above GDP. Now, all economies around the world have got debt levels. Papua New Guinea is one of the lowest, below 35%. We are maintaining debt. In order to encourage growth, you need to borrow money to do that also. So I don't know where people are getting the idea that we can develop our country, we can develop our economy without taking on some debt. So I think the arguments, with due respect to our academics, it's sensational, it is seeking publicity, and arguments that they are portraying on issues they don't understand. And I urge them to go and do some research on the facts and figures that have been presented. This particular investment is going to bring us big revenues into the country into the future, into 30, 40, 50 years. So why shouldn't Papua New Guineans all shares in companies that will continue to bring in some revenue? So I think the argument is flawed, and that it is not correct. And I think that when you also look at many of the sovereign wealth funds around the country, around the world, when you look at Temasek in Singapore, one of the most successful sovereign wealth funds in the world, they borrow money to invest on behalf of their government as well. When you look at the other successful one in Norway, one of the richest sovereign wealth fund in the world, they borrow money to invest on behalf of their people and their government. So it is not something new. Very successful sovereign wealth funds around the world invest on behalf of the people. So it is the debt levels that we have to maintain within our laws, and I think Our government has done well, and I think our government will continue to do well into the future.
Now, the other accusation made by the National Research Institute is that financial benefits from the LNG project have been spent even before the country has been able to see and experience these returns. And this is a repeat of what happened in the 1990s, labeled the lost decade. Is it possible the good times are over? We recently saw profits and company taxes from the Ok Tedi mine come crashing down after years in which Ok Tedi was PNG's single biggest taxpayer. Are we heading for hard times?
I think another argument that's it's flawed in the sense that our academics again lack the research. They are making these statements without any research to back what they are saying. Let me talk about the LNG receipts first. There is no suggestion whatsoever that LNG receipts have been spent before they have been received. There is no suggestion whatsoever. This particular loan, as I said, is going to be serviced through and security of that loan is done through the UBS loan, and the oil says securing that loan. So LNG sales or LNG receipts are not used whatsoever in making sure that we service that loan in the medium term. It will be refinanced within 12 years. The sooner we refinance it, the better it is for the country. And the second issue about lost decade in the 1990s, I cannot speak for people who managed the country during that period. But in the 1990s, you must also understand that we had the Asian financial crisis that came up. We had the Bougainville crisis that came up, which consumed a lot of resources because we had to finance the activities of our security forces who were based in Bougainville. So there were many issues that consumed a lot of revenue from our government in the 1990s that created a issue with our economic decline in those years. But referring to Ok Tedi, one has to remember that it shut down for a few months because of the heavy rainfall, and it filled up the mine pit. So mining activity could not take place. We could not export any copper ore and gold from that mine at all. For a few months, and we had to also pump out the water. As a result, of course, the revenues declined and the profits declined. And at the same time, last year, the management has announced to the nation and to the government that they were also re-equipping many of the old machinery. So it is expected that the profit levels will come down. So I don't think that argument that because Ok Tedi is now reducing its profit outcomes for last year, all of a sudden there is doom and gloom for PNG economy. PNG economy is doing very well. Many predicted that it will slow down, but in fact it is not slowing down. The growth levels are still maintaining, largely because of government strategy. When everybody said that the LNG construction phase, when it comes down, LNG construction alone contributed 3% of our GDP, 3% of our growth. Now, and that growth was now starting to come down because of the construction starting to come into an end. What did the government do? When we knew that that construction phase will slow down, we increased our spending on infrastructure building, increased our spending of government in education and health, so that we can buffer that slowing down. That is happening, so that is why the economy is stabilizing at 6% growth in the country. Now, many countries in the world are not growing at 6%. Papua New Guinea is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. So give credit where it's due, that we are managing the economy as well. All the leading economies around the world think, including IMF, World Bank, ADB, ANZ Bank, the analysis, BSP, all the leading experts say that our economy is doing well, except some of our academics who lack the research data to make that kind of comments. And I find it a little bit disturbing that we can have people just coming out and saying whatever they want and are not held accountable for the debates that they are creating without real facts and figures. They take one case like Oktedi now, because the Oktedi mining profits have come down, they think the entire economy is collapsing. Well, this economy is strong enough to withstand that kind of reliance on one project alone. This economy is moved away from relying on one project. We're not going to expose our country's success because one mine closes down. We must be able to be strong enough. We build agriculture, we must build tourism, we must build infrastructure, we must build services, we must make sure that we build manufacturing. Our oil and gas industry must be stable. Now these are a range of areas of the economy that we are strengthening so that our economy can continue to grow. So the future is very bright for PNG. Don't listen to all the nonsense that people who are negative all the time. You know, this is not a thing that this country needs. We've got enough negativity in our country. We need to think positive that our country is heading in the right direction.
When Insight returns, the provocative UBS loan for Oil Search shares. Prime Minister Peter O'Neill lays it out, replying to commentary from the public. You don't want to miss it.
Your government borrowed 3 billion kina for shares in Oil Search Limited, which Oil Search used to buy its stake in Interoil. But with the money you used for 10% in Oil Search, you could have directly bought the entire 22.5% stake in Interoil, rather than just having a 10% stake. What is your government's reasoning behind this?
Now, the Interoil project is not off the ground yet. Papua New Guinea still has the opportunity to still own up to 22.5% directly. So that option for Papua New Guinea government is still there. Now, for Oil Search, it is their own interest, the company's interest, that they want to participate in it, just like Total, just like Interoil in that project. But Papua New Guinea government will only take up that option when we have the front-end engineering and the final investment decisions are made on this project. So PNG government will own 22.5%, but it is down the track. The final investment decisions by the people who are trying to develop that, which is Interoil, Total, and Oil Search, is not concluded. And when they present those documents to government, PNG government will use that information to make a decision to whether to take 22.5%. So we will in fact own more. When we own 10% of Oil Search, we own more shares than the 19.4% we own in LNG, PNG LNG. We will own more shares indirectly in the Elk and Antelope. So we are increasing our shareholding. We are not reducing it, we are increasing it. So Papua New Guineans have got to realize that we own shares directly and indirectly through Oil Search in both these projects. So I think Papua New Guineans will now realize that we are trying to own directly our resource development projects in the country ourselves for the benefit of 7.5 million people. Now, we are not going to go out there and do deals that are going to benefit other people. We are trying to protect the interest of our people, and they have the right to own shares in these projects, and that is what we are trying to accomplish.
Our next viewer question. Who exactly did your government rely on for a fair and commercial valuation of the shares in Oil Search Limited to justify the price you were paying? Can you explain the professional valuation that was done?
The valuation of the shares and the whole transaction that we are talking about was done by Secretary for Treasury and the Treasury officials, Central Bank Governor and the officials of the Bank of Papua New Guinea, IPBC Managing Director and the management of IPBC. These are our experts who are managing all our investments. So they process the transaction and advise us, yes, this is a good deal or not a good deal. And then government makes the decision. Now, those are the people that we rely on. I don't know who the former treasurer relies on, but I know who I depend on. These are the government officials. Using their knowledge and experience, they advise government. That's why we employ them. The second issue is that we look at price that we were supposed to be paying the Arabs. Arabs, when we were trying to buy back our shares from the Arabs, we were prepared to pay $8.55. That is the agreement that we signed many years back. But the shares that Oil Search offered to us was $8.20. So do we buy at $8.55 or $8.20? Any business person will tell you that they want to buy cheaper. So based on that, and also when the shares were trading, at the time when it was $8 almost 90 at the stock market. The stock prices were $8.90 and we are buying at $8.20. So all the indications show that this is the best deal, because at $8.20 we are buying it at a discount. We are paying it much less than what we were prepared to pay the Arabs, and we are paying much less than what the market was prepared to pay for the Oil Search shares by all the other shareholders. So all in all, I think all the experts that have given us the clearance to buy have done a great job.
So can you confirm this was an internal valuation?
Our officials have done an internal valuation, and by observing the market's valuation as well, and were able to give us advice to conclude on this transaction.
More to follow. Prime Minister speaks about the new Treasurer, Patrick Pruitt, and PNG Power issues. That's Insight when we return.
With our new Treasurer for Papua New Guinea, Mr. Patrick Pruitt, there were reasons why Mr. Pruitt had to leave his portfolio in the past. Have they been cleared? And do you see this as a good replacement and as a good impression for Papua New Guinea?
The issue about Patrick Pruitt is that Patrick Pruitt managed an economy that was growing for quite some time. So the experience that he brings onto this particular portfolio is one that this country needs at this present moment. He is a member of the team that delivered the LNG project. He is a member of a team that delivered the economy for continuous growth over the past 13 years. With that kind of experience, it'll be wasted if we do not utilize it as well. Now, I think you're talking about some of the issues that he has had with the Ombudsman. Those issues are now before the courts, and he will prosecute them as like every other citizen. He has got rights to defend himself, and those issues, I understand, have been managed quite well. So I think all in all, Minister Pruitt is the right man for the job, right man to come in there with using all his experience in terms of his positioning as a leader in managing the economy, when dealing with people with the World Bank, when you're talking about the ADB, all the IMF, these issues is very familiar with. So that is why it is important that we work closely with him and give him an opportunity to participate in the management of our economy.
Moving on to PNG Power. PNG Power recently replaced their CEO, John Tanget, after an ordeal with the IPBC and the PPL board. This affected the workers and was splashed all over the media. Could this ordeal have been avoided?
Of course, it could have been avoided. The board and the management need to work together. They cannot do each other's work. They must work together for the benefit of the company, the employees, but most important of all is the consumer, you and I. They must make sure that their consumer is happy. Our people have access to power. They're sick and tired of the blackouts. They're sick and tired of the infighting that is going on. People have to learn to manage their differences. They should manage their differences for the good of the organization and good of our people and our consumers. So it can be avoided, and I've been telling them, please work together. Learn to manage your issues in-house, and I think that our minister has intervened and taken a good position where he's encouraged them to have a dialogue. There is some understanding that has been reached, and I'm very happy that they are now moving forward into addressing some of the concerns that they have been raising about management issues of the company. But not only PNG Power, but rest of our SOEs, they must not lose sight of the fact that they work for the people of Papua New Guinea, and they work for the consumer. They have customers out there, they depend on them. They depend on their leadership. They depend on their management of those organizations. So, and they will feel good when they start having happy customers and happy shareholders. Shareholders meaning the people of Papua New Guinea. So I think they should get their focus right, their objectives right, and their goals right, and we will have a better organization, better delivery of services.
After the break, we talk good deficit and ICAC legislation. Welcome back to Insight. You have to give it to the Prime Minister for facing tough questions head-on and not shying away from them. Up next, Mr. O'Neill speaks about good deficit and the ICAC legislation.
Prime Minister, ANZ has talked about good deficit, stating reasons due to infrastructure and savings. Can you expand on good deficit?
Good deficit is when a budget enters into a deficit position where we are now trying to spend money on the right areas of the economy. Now, from what I gather from the reports from ANZ economists is that government has done the right thing by investing the deficit money that we are now entering into in this year's budget and last year's budget into areas like the infrastructure, like roads development, when we're developing the ports, when we're developing the airports, making sure that these infrastructures continue to grow the economy of the country. And when we are investing in agriculture, when we're investing in tourism, when we are now investing in water and sewage, these are areas that the economists think that we are trying to help manage the economy so that it can continue the growth. So over the past 2 years or so, this year and last year, you will find that we've increased our expenditure. That is why you see all the roads going all throughout the country, all the airports have been fixed, all the new terminals have been built, expansion of the ports in Lae, expansion of our trying to purchase and re-establish a new port here in Port Moresby. These are aimed directly at making sure that we strengthen the economy and it can continue to grow. Now, we know that in 2015-16, our economy and the size of our economy will double, our GDP will double, meaning that we will have more capacity to do more. Now, when it doubles, all our other expenditures will have to also increase. And I think the deficit will be in a much better shape, and we'll start reducing the deficit to come down. We are trying to make sure that by 2016-17, we will return back to a surplus position. So within 2 or 3 years, we are going to return back to surplus. And from all the experts that understand our economy, the people from World Bank, IMF, ADB, all the other economists around the world, they think that we are managing our economy in the right way. All the targets that we are setting out in line with the expectations of a government that is trying to maintain the levels of growth. So you will see that this growth will continue to increase, also because of the investments that we are trying to encourage. The second LNG project in the Gulf and the third LNG project in the Stanley in the Western Province. Now, when those two come on stream, of course, again, the construction phase of our industry will increase. As a result, more employment will take place, more expenditures will take place, more foreign capital will come into the country, and our economy will continue to increase. So I think you will find that we are heading towards a exciting time in our growth and our economy. And we just need to make sure that we manage our politics so it's stable, no disruptions. And we have a very good parliament. We have a very good parliament. And I think this is a much better parliament than the last parliament and the parliament before, because it is working. And the members of parliament are more experienced, more professional, well-educated people. When you go to parliament now, you will find that attendance level, well over 70, 80 members sitting every day in parliament. Unlike before, we struggle to find numbers to sit on the floor. So they care about the country, they care about the economy. So our greatest risk to the economy is not the loans and not anything else. It is political risk. And if we continue to play around with governments and if we continue to play around with government policies, we will head back to the times where instability created disruption to the economic growth. So Papua New Guinea has got a very bright future. And I want to say this very clearly. In 2017, people will judge us from what I say today. They will judge us and they will vote us or they will not vote for us. And that is the time that we will respect their judgment. But right now, allow us to do our work. Allow us to manage our economy. We are not silly. We know what we are doing. We talk to experts. We get advice from people. We make sure that we are working every day. I work 7 days a week because I care about my country. I care about what I say and what I do for my country. I want to make sure that within 5 years I leave the country in a better shape than when I took over in 2012. So that is why we are focused. So don't be distracted by all the negativity that is going on. People who are negative all the time will never get anywhere because they focus too much about the bad things in life. We need to focus on the good thing.
On a last but equally important issue, the ICAC legislation. You have introduced a number of anti-corruption initiatives through the ICAC legislation. Can you share with us how these will work with other anti-corruption initiatives your government is working on to seriously address the issue of corruption in our country?
Our government is the first government that has addressed this issue head-on. Unlike in the past where governments did not have the numbers to pass these important laws to establish these organizations. ICAC is now established. We have passed it with well over 90 members of parliament voting for it. Now that is a very good indication that the government and the members are wanting this organization to be established. We have established a task force. We've established workforce, public service workforce on anti-corruption issues that is addressing and coordinating all the anti-corruption efforts that has been promoted throughout the country. So a lot is happening as we speak. So I think that we are heading in the right direction. We will establish this independent commission because we want to give them prosecution powers. Right now, anti-corruption agencies don't have direct prosecution powers to arrest and prosecute. And ICAC will be given those powers under the law. They're able to investigate, do an arrest, and prosecute by the same organization. Right now, the police arrests and then gives it to prosecution, and prosecution prosecutes it. And there's a lot of information going missing, files going missing, evidence is getting lost. And as a result, most of the prosecutions are not done properly. They will also be given powers. Some of our now so-called crusaders who are running around pretending to fight against corruption, they have got assets and income, 30-40 million kina that they declare all around the country and driving around in assets that they cannot afford and owning houses that they cannot afford with their salary. People need to explain that. So ICAC has got the powers now. Can come up to anybody and say, how did you get this very expensive house? How did you have this very expensive bank account and you got a lot of money in the bank? Your salary cannot afford it. How did you buy this very expensive car when you don't have enough money to buy this car? So ICAC has got those powers to come and intervene. Not only leaders, but anybody. Because corruption goes two ways. Somebody's giving and somebody's taking. So it's now going to cover everybody. So this is a very important step for our country. And it must be addressed properly. And we want to make sure that this ICAC organization is very independent so that we don't have political interference. And the appointment of the commissioners must be very independent. And operations of that must be very independent. So they are not subjected to some other organization and they're not subjected to some other minister or prime minister. It must be independent and it must have the ability to operate fairly so that it gives everybody an equal opportunity to defend themselves. So I think it's a good thing for the country. I want to say that we must give credit where it's due. We must give credit to this parliament, these members of parliament. For the first time in 40 years, they've been able to get a law to establish ICAC that no other parliament was able to do in 40 years. So let us give credit to them.
And that concludes the questions in this session.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to your program.
And that concludes this exclusive report on Insight. We hope you've enjoyed it. Take care and good night.